Hey guys, tonight we start somewhere you probably didn't expect. The banks of an ancient river in East Africa, about 2 million years ago. The air is thick with the smell of damp earth after a night's rain, and the morning mist clings to the thorny acacia branches like cobwebs. You crouch low in the tall grass, the tips wet against your knees, and peer toward the cluster of shapes ahead. Your group, the people you've known your whole life, if life can be counted in just over 20 years. Somewhere behind you, a hyena gives a lazy whoop. You don't turn. You've learned that not every sound means danger, though you better be right this time. Because honestly, you probably won't survive this if you're wrong. Your hands are calloused, your skin is streaked with dust, and your heart is thudding in that strange mix of morning hunger and low-level fear. There's no breakfast table in this world, only the shared hunt, the shared forage. The people in your group, Homo erectus, don't have language as you'd know it today, but they have something else. Gestures, glances, little noises, a shared understanding built from years of moving together across the savannah. You lock eyes with the tall, scarred male in front of you. He doesn't speak, but you know what he means. Stay close, watch my hands, and don't do anything dumb. This is the world before poetry, before cities, before written records. But it's not the world before feelings. Even now, in this raw, stripped-down existence, emotion flows between you and your group like the unseen currents under a muddy river. You notice it when a mother pulls her toddler closer as a shadow passes overhead. You notice it when a young male, limping from a bad fall weeks ago, gets an arm around his shoulders to help him along instead of being left behind. Somewhere deep inside, you feel it when the group settles for the night, and the warmth of bodies beside you drives back the cold, and you know without any fancy words that this is safety. We tend to think of emotions as a kind of cultural luxury, like they only really bloomed when humans started painting caves or writing poetry. But here, among these early humans, they're just as real and just as critical as stone tools or fire. This is where it starts. The first emotional sparks that went beyond "I'm hungry" or "I'm scared." Somewhere between instinct and what we'd call love, your ancestors began to weave an invisible safety net around themselves, and that net was made of feelings. You watch an older female move toward a youngster, brushing his face free of flies. The boy grins, teeth white against his dark skin, and the older female's eyes narrow in something that is not quite a smile, but close. She's carried him through a rainy season when food was scarce, slept with him curled into her side when the nights were cold, shared whatever scraps she could pry from a bone. Her effort doesn't just keep him alive, it strengthens the group's future. A surviving child means more hands to hunt, more eyes to watch for predators, more voices, however simple, to warn of danger. That tiny act of brushing his face is part affection, part survival plan. Emotions here aren't about romance or art, not yet, but about glue. Not the sticky stuff in a bottle, but the invisible kind that holds a group together when everything else is trying to rip it apart. A lone Homo erectus on the savannah is lunch. A band of 20, that's a hunting party. And what makes them stick together isn't just shared genetics. It's these little flickers of loyalty, protectiveness, even something like fondness. As you walk with them, you notice how everyone's attention flows like water around the group. A cough gets a glance, a stumble gets a hand. A sudden stop from the lead male sends ripples of stillness through everyone. This is more than herd behavior. The gazelles you see in the distance also move together, but they scatter when danger comes. Everyone for itself. Here there's a difference. If someone's lagging, the others notice. They wait. Sometimes they circle back. That's not just instinct. That's the earliest form of what, millions of years later, will be called empathy. You've also seen it when someone dies. Death is common here. Life is short and full of sharp teeth. But it's what happens afterward that hints at something new. You remember the time a young female was taken by a leopard? When the group found her remains, they didn't just sniff and move on, they lingered. They touched her hair. The lead male paced around her body in tight circles, making low, rhythmic sounds. Nobody foraged that day. They sat together until the light faded. No one here is writing an obituary, but you can feel the weight in the air, the absence that will echo for days, that heaviness, that grief beginning to take root. It's not all tenderness. Early emotional sparks also flare into conflict. You've seen squabbles over food turn into shoving matches. You've seen jealous glares when two males show interest in the same female. But even these tensions are part of the story. They mark the moment when survival isn't just about your own body. It's tangled up with your place in the group, your connections, your reputation. That's a new layer of brainwork, managing feelings in a way that keeps you inside the circle, instead of cast out into the tall grass to face the hyenas alone. And yes, there's play, not just children tumbling in the dust, but adults too, mock chasing each other, splashing in a shallow river, passing a bone back and forth like some prehistoric game. It's not wasted energy. Play builds trust. It tests boundaries without drawing blood. It lets the group breathe between the serious business of not dying. The laughter here isn't like modern laughter, more like sharp bursts of breath. Maybe a few short vocalizations, but the feeling is recognizable. Shared lightness, the kind that smooths the rough edges between people. Scientists will one day dig up bones from this time, see healed fractures, worn teeth, and telltale patterns of wear on stone tools. And they'll piece together a picture of cooperation, but you don't need a lab coat to see it. You can feel it in the way the group moves, eats, rests. You can feel it in the way the older members teach the younger ones how to crack a bone for marrow, or show them which berries to avoid. That teaching isn't just instinct, it's an investment in the future. It's an act that says, "You matter enough to me that I want you to survive." Of course, you're not thinking in those terms right now. Right now, you're thinking about the bundle of roots you're carrying, and how you'll share them with the injured male later. You could eat them all yourself. No one would stop you. But you won't, because somewhere in that wrinkled brain of yours, deeper than words, you understand that feeding him means he'll walk again, and when he does, he'll help you when you're the one limping. This is the bargain emotions make possible. I help you, you help me, and both of us live to see another season. The sun is higher now, burning off the mist. The smells change, damp earth giving way to dry grass, animal dung, the faint sweetness of blooming shrubs. The group spreads out a little, eyes scanning the ground for tubers, the air for scents of meat. A juvenile trots past you, giggling in that breathy, chimp-like way, and you can't help but grin. You reach out, ruffle his hair. He swats at your hand, still smiling. The contact is quick, meaningless to an outsider, but in this world it's a thread in the invisible net. One more reminder that you're not alone here. That net will stretch and strengthen over the millennia, catching more and more complex feelings as brains grow and lives change. But here, 2 million years ago, the first strands are already in place. Without them, no one survives. Without them, there's no us, just a scattering of bodies on a very large, very dangerous stage. So you walk on, side by side, with the people who carry your history in their bones, feeling the weight of something you can't name yet, something that will outlast the rivers, the seasons, even the species itself. And you know, in the way only someone in this place and time can know, that you'd rather face the hyenas with them than face the dawn alone. The air today is warmer, heavy with the scent of flowering shrubs and the faint, metallic tang of wet stone along the riverbed. You're kneeling in the shade of a large acacia, fingers working at the stubborn skin of a tuber you dug from the damp soil. A thin layer of grit sticks to your tongue when you lick your lips, but you don't spit it out. Food is food, even if it crunches like sand. Across from you, a young female sits cross-legged with her child clinging to her side. His small hands clutch the fur at her shoulder as he watches her scrape the tuber with a flake of stone, copying her motions with an imaginary tool. He's too young to walk far, though his legs have the same wiry strength you see in every member of the group. His eyes follow everything, the bird hopping nearby, the way the shadows move over the ground, the subtle shifts in his mother's posture. You notice the way she keeps him close, one arm around his back even while she works. It's more than just habit, it's an unspoken tether between them. The tether stretches, Yes, when she has to forage or move quickly, but it never breaks. That tether is the reason he's still alive. In this world, infancy is a gamble, a long one. Your kind doesn't grow fast like antelope or zebra. A newborn can't even hold up its head, can't cling without help, can't follow if the group needs to move. Without that constant watch, that constant contact, a child would vanish to the first predator, the first moment of inattention. And so, early humans like you have begun to stretch the period of care far beyond what most animals ever attempt. This slow childhood isn't a weakness, it's a strategy. The longer a young one stays dependent, the more time there is for the brain to grow, for skills to sink in, for bonds to deepen. And those bonds, they're not just about keeping a child alive today, they shape how the child will live tomorrow. When a mother shelters a toddler from the rain, or lets him ride on her back for miles, she's doing more than transporting a small body. She's weaving trust into his bones. You see it in how the child responds to her. He's not just aware of her presence, he orients himself to her. If she leans forward, he leans with her. If she laughs, that short, breathy chuckle you've all learned to recognize, he makes a sound in return, even if he doesn't understand the joke. This constant back and forth is teaching him the rhythms of connection, the same rhythms that will keep him in the circle when he's grown. It's not only mothers who do this. Fathers, older siblings, even unrelated adults, all take turns keeping watch. You've carried him yourself before, feeling the weight of his small hands gripping your hair, his head bumping against your shoulder with each step. At first it's awkward, tiring, but then you notice something. He settles against you in the same way he does with his mother. His breathing slows, his fingers loosen. It's trust again, shared between more than just one pair. This kind of shared care is rare among animals, but here it's becoming the norm. The group invests in each child, because each child is the group's future. In a way, that's the start of something bigger, an understanding that survival doesn't just come from your own effort, but from everyone's effort. When danger comes, you see this attachment in sharp relief. A shadow falls across the clearing, a vulture circling lazily overhead, and in an instant, every adult's head tilts up. Eyes scan, bodies shift. The mother tucks the boy behind her leg. Another female picks up her own child, clutching him tight against her chest. The lead male stands, scanning the horizon, his body tense. This isn't random panic, it's coordinated vigilance. Even the children sense it and stay still. When the moment passes, the group relaxes, but the touch, the proximity remains. Food sharing strengthens this bond further. A mother who finds a ripe cluster of berries will press them into her child's hand before she eats herself. Even when supplies are scarce, the youngest get priority. You've seen mothers refuse food entirely so their children can eat, and somehow the group absorbs that sacrifice, compensating later. It's not charity, it's investment. Keeping the weakest alive now means having more strong bodies later. Sometimes, though, the gamble fails. Illness comes, or an injury festers. The child might wither, despite every effort. When that happens, you've seen something you can't mistake. Mothers sitting for hours with the still body, rocking it gently, as if motion might call it back. The others give space, forming a quiet perimeter. No one forages, no one plays. For a day, maybe two, the group stays close, as if proximity itself can soften the loss. There are no words, but there is presence, and presence is its own form of language. All this care requires more than instinct. Instinct might drive a mother to protect her own young, but here, the attachment spreads further, to kin, to allies, sometimes even to the offspring of rivals. That expansion is part of the evolutionary magic. It's rewiring your brain to see my child, and your child as less distinct, at least sometimes. That flexibility makes the group stronger. This prolonged dependency also changes how the group moves and hunts. You can't just sprint after prey for hours if you're carrying a toddler. You can't travel too far from water if there are infants to nurse. These constraints force cooperation. The faster members scout ahead. The slower ones guard the young, and everyone adjusts to the needs of the most vulnerable. In this way, parent-offspring bonds quietly reshape the entire group's patterns. You remember one migration season when the rains failed early. The grass dried, waterholes shrank, and the herds moved farther than usual. The decision to follow wasn't simple. The children couldn't walk the distance in a day, so the group split into smaller teams, leapfrogging supplies, carrying the youngest in turns. It took twice as long, but everyone made it. That wasn't because of raw strength. It was because of commitment. The drive to keep the children alive was stronger than the hunger clawing at your ribs. The children themselves learn through these journeys. They ride on hips, backs, and shoulders, eyes wide, absorbing the landscape and the way the adults interact with it. They see who spots danger first, who finds food, who gives water without being asked. They're not just learning survival skills, they're learning the emotional map of the group, who can be trusted, who listens, who shares. At night, the lessons continue. Children sleep pressed between adults, their small bodies soaking in warmth. They wake to soft touches, a hand steadying them, a body shifting to shield them from the wind. They hear the low hum of adult voices, the clicks and grunts of quiet conversation. This is their first language, shaped not by grammar, but by closeness. In the quiet moments, when the children are asleep, and the fire, if you've managed to keep it, burns low, you think about how much your life revolves around them. Not just your own offspring, but all of them. Every decision, when to move, where to hunt, when to rest, bends around the need to protect and nurture them. In this way, parent-offspring attachment isn't just an emotional detail, it's the axis around which the whole community spins. Over time, this deep investment in children has another effect. It changes how adults relate to each other. When you've shared the work of keeping a child alive, when you've taken turns carrying them, feeding them, guarding them, you form bonds with the other caretakers that are almost as strong as the one you have with the child. That's the seed of social networks, alliances that last beyond a single season. And as brains grow, those alliances become more complex. It's no longer just you help my child, I help yours. It becomes a web of obligations, trust, and shared history. A female whose child you once carried might share food with you months later when you're injured. A male who protected your toddler from a wild dog might find you at his side during a tense standoff with a rival group. These exchanges are built on the same foundation as the mother-child bond, the knowledge that someone else's survival is tied to your own. This isn't a sentimental world. If food runs out, if danger strikes too hard choices are made. But even then, the pull toward protecting the young remains strong enough to override pure self-interest more often than not. That's the beginning of something that will grow over millennia. The idea that the future is worth sacrificing for, even if you won't personally see it. As you sit in the shade watching the young boy tug at the tuber skin in his mother's hands, you realize that his survival depends on dozens of small choices made by many people. The choice to carry him instead of more food, the choice to share water when it's scarce, the choice to slow the group's pace so he can keep up. These aren't dramatic gestures. They're the quiet, constant reinforcements of a bond that shapes not just his life, but the path of your entire species. The boy finally manages to peel a strip of skin from the tuber and holds it up, beaming. His mother takes it, inspects it, and gives him a grunt of approval. He giggles, leaning into her side. You smile without meaning to. It's a small thing, but it's enough. In a world where survival hangs on a knife's edge, these small things are everything. They're the reason humans will carry their children longer than any other primate, the reason those children will grow into adults capable of more than just surviving. They'll be able to connect, to cooperate, to care, because from the very start, they've been shown how. The ground under your feet is hard, packed and dry, scattered with shards of old stone tools that glitter faintly in the morning light. You're walking beside a broad-shouldered male, his stride steady, his eyes scanning the savanna ahead. Beside him is a female, her hair pulled back in a knot of twisted fiber, and between them, their hands brush now and then, not by accident. In this world, Such contact is as deliberate as placing a stone in a hearth. It marks something new, something that will last longer than a single season. Pair bonding isn't the default among early humans. Many still drift from one partner to another, drawn by opportunity or convenience. But here, in this particular group, you've begun to notice a shift. Certain pairs move together more often, share food without hesitation, rest beside each other at night. The connection isn't just physical, it's cooperative, and it extends to the work of survival. It makes sense when you think about it. Raising a child in this harsh world is too big a task for one person. If two adults commit to working together for years, not just days or weeks, the chances of keeping that child alive shoot up. And it's not only about the child, it's about the stability it brings to the entire group. A bonded pair becomes a predictable unit. You know who will watch who's back during a hunt, who will share their water in the dry months, who will guard the camp while the others are away. This bond isn't sealed with ceremonies or promises. There are no carved tokens, no woven garlands, no witness but the group itself. Instead, it's built through repetition. They bring each other food. They rest against the same tree. They leave camp together and return together. Over time, these patterns harden into something durable. You've seen the benefits firsthand. When a bonded male is injured, his partner stays close, bringing food, tending wounds, chasing off scavengers that creep too near. When a female falls ill after giving birth, her partner carries water, forages for her, even guards the baby in her absence. This is more than instinct. It's strategy. Two working as one can weather storms, hunger, and predators better than one alone. Of course, there's tension too. A bonded pair can become a source of jealousy for others. You've watched rival males circle the edges of camp, pretending not to stare. You've seen females bristle when a bonded male offers food to someone other than his partner. This is new territory. Emotions pulling in two directions, toward cooperation and competition at the same time. The balance isn't easy, and sometimes it tips into open conflict. One afternoon, you're by the river when two males square off. Their voices sharp, bodies rigid. The source of the fight isn't meat or water. It's a female who has been spending more time with one than the other. The display is intense, chests puffed, arms raised, faces twisted. But what's striking is how the group responds. The bonded pairs stay close together, eyes flicking between the fighters, bodies angled protectively toward their partners. In that moment you realize something. These bonds don't just tie individuals together, they also create clear lines of alliance. The pair you've been watching moves toward the edge of the conflict. But they don't get involved. They sit side by side, the female's hand resting lightly on the male's forearm. It's a small signal. I'm here, I'm with you. And it seems to steady him. Later, when the tension has burned out and the rivals have slunk away, the two of them walk together to gather tubers, as if nothing happened. That's the quiet resilience of a pair bond. It absorbs shocks that might otherwise break a looser tie. Pair bonding also changes how food is shared. In the broader group, there's a kind of casual exchange. Give some here, take some there. But between bonded partners, the exchange is more consistent. If one returns from a hunt with meat, the other eats first, even before close kin. This priority can spark resentment, but it also strengthens the pair's ability to face hardship together. You've noticed how these bonds affect the rhythm of daily life. In the mornings, pairs often leave camp together, choosing tasks that keep them close. One digs for roots while the other watches for danger. At night, they settle into the same spot, sometimes with a child between them, their bodies forming a living shelter. These habits create a dependable rhythm that benefits not just them, but the children who grow up inside that stability. And stability is rare here. Weather shifts without warning. Predators strike in seconds. Food sources appear and vanish with the seasons. In the middle of all that chaos, a bond that lasts more than a season is a kind of anchor. It lets you plan further ahead, take risks you might avoid alone, and trust that someone will be there when the risk doesn't pay off. You've seen this during hunts. A pair will coordinate in ways that look almost choreographed. One flushes small game toward the other, or distracts a dangerous animal while the other moves in for the kill. This kind of unspoken teamwork comes from long practice, from learning each other's signals, strengths, and limits. It's not perfect, but it's far more effective than the clumsy coordination you see between strangers. Pair bonding also shifts how disputes are resolved. When conflict breaks out within the group, bonded partners often act as mediators. Not because they're inherently wiser, but because their alliance gives them a kind of credibility. If you're stable enough to keep one relationship steady in this unpredictable world, people are more likely to trust you to keep your word elsewhere. But there's a cost. If one partner dies, the survivor often struggles. You've seen it. The listless movements, the way they avoid the spots they used to share, the way they drift at the edges of the group. Sometimes they find a new partner, sometimes they don't. The grief is quieter than the mourning for a child, but it's there, shaping choices in ways you can feel but not fully name. This depth of connection isn't universal. Some still prefer looser ties, moving between partners when it suits them. But over time, the benefits of pair bonding, shared labor, mutual defense, consistent childcare are stacking up. The more stable pairs there are in a group, the better that group fares in the long run. It's not about romance in the way your distant descendants will think of it. It's about creating a unit that can survive where the odds are stacked against everyone. There's another subtle shift that comes with this pattern: planning. A bonded pair can start thinking in terms of next season or when the rains come back, rather than just today. You've heard pairs discussing where the herds might move, how to store dried meat, which water holes might last longest in the dry months. This long view is possible because they trust each other to still be there when the time comes. And as pairs become more common, the group as a whole starts to think further ahead. Plans are made, not just for the next meal, but for the next hunt, the next migration. This kind of planning, this patience, is one of the first steps toward the complex societies your species will one day build. Still, the bonds aren't unbreakable. Sometimes jealousy shatters them, or a partner's repeated failures in hunting or foraging make them less valuable in the harsh economy of survival. But when a bond holds, it becomes a model. Young people watch, learn what to expect, what to give, what to guard against. These models shape their choices when it's their turn to pair up. You're walking back to camp now, your arms full of gathered roots. The bonded pair you've been watching is just ahead, their shoulders brushing as they climb the small rise toward the fire. The child between them stumbles on a rock, and without a word, both reach down to steady him. That, right there, is the essence of the thing. Two people, one motion, keeping another alive. The sun dips low, painting the sky in streaks of red and gold. You settle near the fire, watching the pair share their food, first with each other, then with the child, and finally with others in the group. Around you, the night sounds rise, the calls of insects, the distant cough of a leopard, the crackle of burning wood. In this fragile world, the bond between two people is more than just companionship. It's an act of defiance against the chaos, a small but stubborn piece of order in the endless wild. The morning starts heavy and still, as if the air itself is holding its breath. You're camped on the edge of a rocky outcrop, overlooking a wide stretch of grassland that ripples under the first touch of light. It should be a good day for foraging, but the group moves slowly. There's a quiet weight hanging over everyone, a silence that is more than just the usual early morning calm. 2 days ago, one of the older females stumbled while crossing the river and never got up again. She was not your closest companion, but she was part of the fabric of the group, always ready to help carry a child, to show the younger ones which plants to dig, to call out a warning when she saw danger first. Now there is an empty space where she used to sit by the fire. In the animal world, death is often met with indifference. Many species move on quickly, the living focused entirely on their own survival. But here, among your kind, something different happens. The group lingers. People avoid her usual spot, not out of fear, but because of what it stirs inside them. Her closest kin sit apart, their eyes fixed on the ground. No one has laughed since it happened. When she first fell, there was a flurry of activity, calls to the others, hands lifting her from the water, the pressing of palms against her chest. But it became clear quickly that nothing could be done. After the stillness came a strange, low hum from her daughter. Not words, just a sound that seemed to pull at everyone's chest. Others joined in, voices overlapping in a slow, mournful rhythm. You felt it too, deep in your ribs, as if the sound was loosening something inside you. That day, no one hunted. No one foraged far from camp. The group stayed close, gathering around the body, where it lay in the shade. Some stroked her hair. One of the older males placed a flat stone beside her head, as though marking her place. A few of the children were kept back, but others came forward, touching her hand, staring at her face with wide, uncertain eyes. They didn't fully understand, but they could feel the change in the air. By nightfall, there was a decision to move her. The place by the river was too exposed, too close to the water, where predators might come. You helped carry her up the slope, each step careful. The ground was hard, so the men used pointed sticks to loosen the soil. It wasn't a deep pit, just enough to hold her body, with stones placed around it to keep scavengers out. There were no carvings, no offerings, no flowers, not yet. But the act itself was deliberate. She was not left where she fell. She was placed somewhere safe, and that safety mattered even if she couldn't feel it anymore. This is one of the first signs of grief you've begun to understand. The urge to keep the dead close, to give them some kind of shelter even after life has gone. You don't have the words for it, but you feel it. You can see it in the way others glance toward the spot the next day, in the way they avoid speaking loudly nearby, in the way her daughter still sits close to the stones. Grief is heavy, but it also binds. In those first days after her death, the group is softer with each other. Food is shared more freely. The young are kept closer. Disputes, when they rise, fade more quickly. It's as if the loss is a reminder of how easily the living can vanish, and no one wants to risk pushing anyone else away. You've seen loss before, but each time it feels different. When a child died last season after a long sickness, the grief was sharper, more frantic, cries that went on for hours, mothers clutching their own children tighter. When an older male was taken by a lion, the reaction was tense and watchful, as if the danger might still be near. But for this female, the grief is quieter. It comes in pauses during the day, in the way someone might stop mid-task and stare off toward the horizon. The children notice. You see one of them mimic the daughter's slow rocking motion, not in mockery, but in imitation, as if trying to understand what it means. That's another way grief shapes your kind. It teaches the next generation that bonds are worth noticing, that losing someone matters. They learn not through lectures, but through the weight in the air and the change in the group's movements. There's another thing you've begun to sense: memory. Not just remembering where to find water or when the herds will pass, but remembering a person after they are gone, days after the burial. The daughter finds a piece of bone her mother once used as a digging tool. She carries it with her for hours, rubbing her thumb along the worn edge. It's a small act, but you recognize it as something new, holding onto a piece of someone, not because it's useful, but because it's theirs. Sometimes you think grief might be as important for survival as any tool. It makes the group hold tighter to the living. It sharpens the instinct to protect each other, to avoid needless risk. It deepens the sense that we is worth more than me, and in a world where everything is temporary, shelter, food, even life itself, those feelings might be the most enduring thing you have. The burial site becomes part of your map. On the next move, when the group ranges farther for food, you pass by it again. The stones are still there, though weathered by wind and rain. Some of the younger ones pause, looking at the spot as if expecting to see her rise. The adults move on more quickly, but no one disturbs the stones. They've become a marker, not just of a death, but of the group's history. In the evenings, when the light is low and the fire crackles softly, the older members sometimes speak of her, not in full sentences. Your people don't have that yet, but in gestures, sounds and fragments of memory. They mimic the way she used to swat at flies, the way she'd whistle to call others over when she found food. The children laugh at these imitations, and the laughter seems to lift some of the weight from the air. This is the other side of grief, remembering not just the loss, but the life. It keeps her in the group in a way. Even though her body is gone, you realize that this kind of remembering isn't just comfort, it's knowledge. The stories, gestures, and imitations pass on information about how she lived, what she knew, what she could do. In that way, grief becomes a bridge between the past and the future. There's a danger in this too. The more you value individuals, the more their loss can shake you. You've seen groups splinter after a leader's death, alliances fray when a key bond is gone. But over time, your kind seems to be finding ways to balance it, to let grief deepen the ties that remain rather than break them. Weeks pass, the grass shifts from green to gold, and the dry season bites harder. Food is harder to find, tempers shorter, but you notice that the daughter, though still quieter than before, has begun to join in the foraging again. One afternoon, she hands a tuber to a child who isn't her own. The gesture is small, but you see the ripple it causes, a sign that she's reweaving herself into the fabric of the group. You've come to understand that grief isn't something you leave behind. It lingers, sometimes sharp, sometimes dull, sometimes hidden until something pulls it forward again. But it doesn't only take, it also gives. It teaches caution, tenderness, and the importance of holding on to each other. On the next migration, you pass another burial site from years ago. You were young then, but you remember it, a mound of stones on a hilltop, the wind whistling through the grass. The group gathered in a tight circle. Seeing it now, weathered and half overgrown, stirs a mix of feelings, sadness, yes, but also a strange comfort. These markers mean that you've been here before, that others have walked this same path and faced the same losses. That's the quiet truth about grief among your kind. It's not just an ending, but a thread running through the long weave of your history. Each loss marks you, changes you, and somehow makes you more human than you were before. The sun is high and sharp today, burning the grass a brittle yellow. Heat shimmers over the plain, and the air is so still you can hear the faint pop of seed pods splitting in the brush. The group is gathered in the patchy shade of a stand of thorn trees, taking the rare opportunity to rest in the middle of the day. There's not much conversation, just the quiet scrape of stone on bone as someone works a tool, the soft hum of flies, and the occasional rustle when a child shifts in the dust. Then it happens. The sound cuts through the heat, like a splash of cold water, a burst of laughter. It starts with two of the older boys, each holding one end of a long stick, their mock fighting, twisting and feinting in exaggerated moves, their bare feet kicking up little clouds of dust. One fakes a stumble, and the other makes an over-the-top lunge that ends in a graceless tumble into the dirt. The sound that follows isn't just a bark or a grunt. It's that short, breathy, unmistakable rhythm, the beginning of laughter as you know it. Heads turn. The children giggle first, their voices high and quick. Then some of the adults smile, shaking their heads. One of the women, still grinding seeds between two stones, lets out her own soft chuckle. Before long, the sound is contagious. Even those who didn't see the fall are laughing, not because the event itself matters, but because the sound of joy has a way of spreading faster than fire in dry grass. This isn't the first time you've heard it, and it won't be the last. Play and laughter are beginning to carve their place in the lives of your kind. At first glance, it might seem like wasted energy. In a world where every calorie is precious, why spend it on mock battles, chasing each other through the grass, or making silly faces at children? But the more you watch, the more you understand. This isn't waste, it's investment. Play builds something essential: trust. In mock fights, you learn how far to push without crossing into harm. In chase games, you practice the skills of pursuit and evasion without risking your life against real prey or predators. Even the roughhousing that leaves you sprawled in the dust teaches where the boundaries lie. Who is strong? Who is fast? Who will help you up afterward? Laughter is the glue that seals those moments. When you laugh with someone, you mark them as safe, as part of your circle. It's a signal to others. This person is on my side, And unlike the silent cooperation of a hunt or the solemn togetherness of grief, laughter is loud. It draws attention, invites others to join. That's part of its power. It expands the circle. Later in the afternoon, you join a group heading toward the river. It's not just about water. The shaded banks are a good place to dig for tubers. The work is quiet for a while, each person focused on the stubborn roots. Then one of the younger men unearths a crooked tuber that looks vaguely hilariously like the hunched shape of the lead male. He holds it up, mimics the older man's stiff gait, and suddenly the air is full of snorts and muffled giggles. Even the lead male cracks a rare grin, shaking his head as if to say, "Yes, I see it." Moments like these cut through the constant undercurrent of tension that runs through every day. Out here, vigilance is a habit. You never drop, eyes scanning, ears pricked for the sound of a stalker in the grass. But laughter is a release valve. It's a way to tell your body, even for a few seconds, that you are safe enough to drop your guard. That safety, however brief, is shared, and that's what makes it stick. Children are the experts at this. They'll turn anything into a game. Tossing pebbles at a target, seeing who can leap the farthest, or making strange noises to see who can copy them. Their laughter is frequent and bright, drawing in adults almost without effort. You found yourself pulled into their games more than once, pretending to be a predator stalking them through the grass, only to be defeated when they swarm you in a pile of small limbs and triumphant squeals. The lessons aren't one-sided. Through play, the children learn to coordinate, to read each other's movements, to anticipate what someone else might do next. These are the same skills they'll need when the stakes are life and death, and they learn them in a space where mistakes don't cost blood, only pride and maybe a little dust in the mouth. Play also has a way of smoothing over small conflicts. You've seen two children squabble over a scrap of food, glaring at each other as they sit apart. But minutes later, one will toss a stick to the other, and soon they're laughing again, the earlier tension forgotten. Among adults, it works in a quieter way. A shared joke can thaw the chill between two people who clashed over a hunting strategy or an unfair share of meat. The more you watch, the clearer it becomes that joy isn't just an accident in this world. It's a tool. It's used to knit the group together, to repair frayed connections, to teach without words. And unlike fear or hunger, which pull your focus inward, joy pushes it outward, toward others. It's in the exchange of looks when someone trips over nothing, the shared grin when the hunt goes unexpectedly well, the mock scolding when a child steals food from your hand and runs away laughing. There's even a rhythm to how it appears. After a tense moment, a predator spotted in the distance, a sudden storm, the first sign of returning safety is often a joke, a bit of teasing, or a playful shove. It's the group's way of saying, "We made it through that one." You've begun to notice that not everyone is equally skilled at sparking laughter. Some are naturals. They know how to make a face, a sound, or a gesture that will ripple through the group in seconds. Others are quieter, but when they do join in, their laughter is no less important. It's not about who's the funniest. It's about participation, about letting yourself be part of that shared release. At night, when the fire is burning low, play takes a different form. There's less running and chasing, more mimicry and storytelling. Someone might act out the awkward hop of a lame gazelle, or the dramatic leap of a fish escaping a net. The audience, your group, rewards the performance with smiles, nods, and the occasional outburst of laughter. These moments are more than entertainment. They're practice in observation, memory, and performance. Skills that will one day become the foundation for complex storytelling. Laughter also has a strange way of making the group feel bigger than it is. In moments of joy, you feel more connected, not just to the people within arm's reach, but to the whole band. You remember the time the group split for a few weeks to follow different herds, and when you reunited, the first thing shared wasn't food or news, but a retelling of a ridiculous mishap from the hunt, complete with exaggerated gestures and bursts of laughter that needed no translation. Even in the face of scarcity, play and humor survive. Last dry season, when water was so scarce that tempers were raw and every step felt like a gamble, one of the women made a game of tossing pebbles into a nearly empty pool watching the ripples distort the reflection of anyone who leaned over to drink. It was nothing, a moment's distraction, but it broke the oppressive mood, and for a few minutes the group felt lighter. Of course, joy doesn't erase danger. Even as you sit here in the afternoon warmth, a part of your mind is tracking the nearest cover, the likely direction of a predator's approach. But joy coexists with that vigilance. It's a counterweight, keeping you from being crushed under the constant weight of survival. By now, you've come to understand that laughter and play are more than fleeting pleasures. They are practice for cooperation, for communication, for trust. They are a way to remember that life is not only about avoiding death, and perhaps most importantly, they remind everyone that this, being here, together, is worth protecting. As the heat begins to fade and the group stirs to move again, you glance back at the boys who started it all. They're walking side by side now, the stick abandoned, the conversation, if it can be called that, full of little bursts of shared amusement. The sound lingers in the air behind them, like a promise that even in a world as sharp-edged as this one, there will always be room for a little foolishness. And maybe you think as you fall into step with the others, that foolishness is one of the best survival skills your kind will ever have. The day begins with movement, the kind of coordinated stirring that means a hunt is on. Even before the sun clears the horizon, the hunters are already shifting their weight from foot to foot, checking the edges of their spears, adjusting the ties on their carrying slings. You fall in with them, feeling the familiar low hum of anticipation. This isn't just about food. It's about proving you can be trusted with the group's most dangerous, most vital work.
Cooperative hunting is the lifeblood of your kind. No single person could take down a large antelope alone, not without risking injury or worse. But together, you have a chance. And together here doesn't just mean numbers. It means timing, trust, and an unspoken language of glances and gestures.
The target today is a small herd of kudu grazing along the far edge of a shallow valley. The plan is simple. In theory, half the hunters will circle wide, driving the animals toward the others, who will wait in hiding. In practice, everything depends on the group's ability to read each other, to know without words when to move, when to stay, when to strike. You remember the first time you joined such a hunt. Your role had been to drive the animals, running hard and shouting, waving your arms to keep them from veering off course. You'd been clumsy, too loud at the wrong moment, too slow at another. The result had been chaos, the herd scattering in every direction, the more experienced hunters glaring at you afterward. That day you learned a hunt is not just physical, it's emotion. You have to sense the group's rhythm, to feel when the tension is building toward a strike, and to trust that everyone else will be in place when the moment comes. Today you've earned a better position, hidden with the spearmen along the game trail. Your job is to wait until the kudu are in range, then move as one to cut off their escape. The waiting is the hardest part. You can hear the distant shouts of the drivers, the thud of hooves as the herd starts to move. Your grip tightens on the spear. You glance at the hunter beside you. His eyes flick to yours. A quick signal, not yet. When the kudu appear, their flanks heaving, dust spraying from their hooves, everything happens fast. The lead male of your group steps forward, and the rest follow without hesitation. Spears arc through the air. A cry goes up, not from fear, but from the shared surge of effort. You lunge, the point of your spear glancing off a kudu's shoulder. The hunter beside you finishes the job, and in the heartbeat that follows, the rest of the herd is gone, bounding back into the safety of the brush. The animal lies still. No one claims it as theirs. The kill belongs to the group. The drivers come trotting in, their faces slick with sweat, and the hunters clasp hands, slap shoulders. There's no counting of who did more, no measuring whose strike was deadliest. The success belongs to everyone, and so will the meat. That's the essence of this kind of hunting, mutual trust. You risk your life running toward sharp hooves and flailing horns, because you believe the others will do the same. You hold your ground because you trust they'll be there when the animal turns. Without that trust, no one would step into danger. The hunt would collapse before it began. But the trust doesn't end with the kill. Once the kudu is butchered, The work of carrying the meat begins. The load is heavy, the sun merciless. Those who are tired hand off their share to others. Water is passed around without question, even the ones who took no part in the hunt. The children, the older members, will receive meat tonight. This is the unspoken agreement. The hunters risk themselves for the group, and the group keeps the hunters strong in return. Of course, not every hunt ends in success. There are days when the prey escapes, when injuries slow the chase, when a sudden shift in wind carries your scent ahead and ruins the approach. Those days are the true test. You've seen tempers flare after a failed hunt, accusations muttered, glances sharp as flint, but you've also seen the group recover, laughter and teasing creeping back in by evening, the sting of failure eased by the promise of trying again tomorrow. What's remarkable is how much of this cooperation happens without formal planning. There's no map drawn in the dirt, no detailed speech. The hunters know their roles because they've learnt them over countless hunts, by watching, by trying, by failing, and trying again. The understanding runs deeper than words. It's in the body, in the way you match your pace to another's, in the way your eyes track the same movement without having to point it out. Even outside the hunt, the habits carry over. You find yourself moving in sync with others during foraging, watching each other's backs at the waterhole, instinctively stepping in to help when someone stumbles under a heavy load. It's as if the hunt is a rehearsal for life itself, a constant reminder that survival here is not an individual sport. There's also a strange intimacy in the hunt. When you stand beside someone as they face down a charging animal, you see them stripped of every mask. Fear, determination, calculation, it's all there in the tightness of their jaw, the set of their shoulders, and when they hold their ground, when they meet danger without flinching, that image stays with you. It makes you want to stand beside them again, whether in a hunt or in anything else that threatens. You've noticed, too, that cooperative hunting forges unexpected bonds. Two hunters who rarely spoke before might become close after working well together on a drive. A younger member who proves their worth in the hunt might earn the respect and protection of the older ones. In this way, the hunt reshapes the group's social fabric with each outing. On the walk back to camp, the mood is light. There's banter about who ran fastest, who almost tripped over a rock, who scared the kudu into turning too soon. The meat is heavy, but no one complains. The shared effort has left its mark. You can feel it in the way people walk closer together, in the easy rhythm of conversation. When you arrive, the news of the kill spreads quickly. Those who stayed behind move to help with the work of cooking, smoking, and dividing the meat. The first bites go to the hunters, but no one is left out. Even the smallest child gets a piece, their face smeared with grease as they chew. Later, as the fire burns low and the night air cools, the hunt is retold in gestures and short, sharp sounds. The leap of the kudu, the throw of the spear, the final moments before the kill. The younger ones watch wide-eyed, absorbing every detail. Someday, they'll step into the line themselves, and these stories will be their guide. Cooperative hunting has done more than feed your people. It has trained you to trust, to coordinate, to put the group before yourself in moments of danger. It has taught you to read each other's intentions from a glance, to respond to unspoken cues, to move as one when it matters most. These skills don't vanish when the hunt ends. They follow you into every part of life, into guarding the camp, caring for the sick, even settling disputes. As you lie down to sleep, the scent of roasted meat still in the air, you think about the kudu. You think about the moment when everyone moved together, without a single word, and brought it down. That's the part that stays with you. Not the meat, not the danger, but the feeling of being part of something larger than yourself. And in that feeling, you realize, is a kind of love, not the soft, quiet bond of parent to child or partner to partner, but the fierce, unshakable love of people who face the wild together and choose, again and again, not to face it alone. The wind today smells of damp earth and crushed leaves. The aftermath of last night's rain. Puddles fill the low spots between rocks, their surfaces alive with tiny insects. You walk at the back of the group, watching as the older male ahead leans heavily on a stick. His right leg drags just a little, each step uneven. The injury happened weeks ago, a deep gash from a fall onto sharp stone, and in most of the animal world, that would have been the end of him. Predators don't give second chances, and the pace of survival doesn't slow for the wounded. But here, it did. When he fell, the others stopped. Two of the strongest males pulled him up, slinging his arm over their shoulders. For days afterward, the group's pace slowed to match his. When he couldn't forage, others brought him food. At night, someone always slept close enough to hear if he called out. You were among those who fetched water for him, filling a cracked gourd from the river and carrying it back carefully so it wouldn't spill. This isn't just pity, it's strategy. A wounded man, once healed, is still a hunter, a lookout, a protector. Keeping him alive keeps the group strong. But it's more than strategy too. You can feel it in the way they talk to him, in the easy teasing that hasn't stopped just because he can't keep up. They're not just saving a resource, they're protecting one of their own. That's the essence of empathy, in your kind. The ability to see yourself in another's place and act on it, even when it costs you something. It's not universal. There are moments of selfishness, of course. But when it appears, it can mean the difference between life and death. You've seen other examples. There's the young female who lost most of her teeth to an infection last year. She can't chew tough meat or fibrous roots anymore, but she's still here because others softened food for her, pounding it with stones, soaking it in water until she can swallow it. You've watched her return the favor in her own way, taking over the slow, careful work of watching the smallest children while their mothers forage. Or the boy who survived a fever that left him too weak to hunt for months. During that time, his older sister made sure he ate before she did. Now that he's recovered, he shadows her closely, carrying her share of wood without being asked. No one told him to do this. It's simply what you do when someone has kept you alive. These acts don't come with ceremony. No one announces, "I will care for you." The help is woven into the daily flow. A handful of berries pressed into someone's palm, a water skin placed within reach, a steadying hand offered without comment. And because these gestures are quiet, they can pass unnoticed, until you start looking for them. Sometimes the help lasts for months or years. Once you met a group travelling from the far side of the hills. Among them was a man who had clearly been blind for some time, his eyes clouded, his steps careful, yet he kept pace because two younger members walked on either side, guiding him with the pressure of their hands on his arms. He couldn't hunt, couldn't forage far, but he knew the land in ways the others didn't. His memory of waterholes, safe shelters, and old migration routes was a resource worth emroting, and so was he. There are risks to this compassion. Slowing for the injured can mean losing a chance at fresh water. Sharing food can mean going hungry yourself, and sometimes, despite all effort, the one you help still dies. You remember a long dry season when the group carried a frail elder for weeks, refusing to leave her behind. When she finally died, the cost of the slowed pace had been high. The group was gaunt, their reserves nearly gone, and yet no one spoke of regret. That's because empathy, once established, becomes part of the group's identity. It's how you measure who we are. A group that abandons its wounded loses more than a person. It loses a piece of what makes it strong, and everyone feels that loss in their bones. Children learn this early. They see adults tending the sick, helping the injured stand, keeping pace with those who limp, and then they imitate it in their games. A child pretending to be hurt will be helped along by the others, given food from a pile of leaves. It's play, but it's also practice. By the time they're grown, the habit is ingrained. Empathy also strengthens trust. If you've been helped before, you know help will come again. That knowledge changes how you move through the world. It allows you to take risks you might otherwise avoid, crossing a swollen river, chasing a wounded animal into thick brush, because you believe someone will be there if things go wrong. And when they are there, that bond deepens even more. There's another layer to this. Emotional healing. Physical wounds close over time, But being cared for when you are vulnerable leaves a mark that lasts longer than scars. You see it in the older male now, the one with the leg wound. He's moving more easily these days, his limp less pronounced. And though he's always been quiet, you notice he speaks more often now, offering advice to the younger hunters, pointing out signs in the grass. It's as if being carried through his weakness has given him a new stake in the group's success. Sometimes empathy takes the form of protection rather than direct care. When a leopard's cough echoed near camp one night, the hunters placed themselves between the sound and the sleeping children without needing to be asked. When a sudden storm turned the ground to sucking mud, the fastest foragers circled back to help the slower ones, not because they were related, but because they were part of us. And empathy isn't limited to humans. You've seen your kind offer help to animals too, freeing a bird caught in a vine, or driving a predator away from a zebra foal. These moments are rarer and not always practical, but they show that the instinct to ease suffering can spill beyond a group. Whether or not such acts pay off isn't the point. The impulse itself is what matters. Still, it's within the group that empathy has its greatest impact. It reinforces every other bond, parent to child, partner to partner, hunter to hunter. Without it, the rest frays. Trust becomes brittle, cooperation falters, fear takes over. This morning, as you follow the group along the muddy trail, you see the older male stumble slightly. Without thinking, you step forward, placing a hand under his elbow, until he finds his balance. He glances at you, not quite a smile, but something close, and you move on together. The moment is small, gone in seconds, but it's one of thousands that weave your group into more than just a collection of individuals. By midday, you reach a grove where the ground is soft and the air smells of ripe fruit. The injured male settles on a fallen log, resting his leg while others climb to gather what they can. You bring him a handful without comment. He eats slowly, nodding once in thanks. Around you, the group moves in an easy rhythm, passing food down, catching dropped fruit before it hits the dirt, keeping an eye on the children weaving between the trees. As the sun dips low and you start back toward camp, you think about all the ways your people hold each other up, not because they must, but because they can. That choice, repeated again and again over countless generations, is as vital to your survival as sharp stone or strong legs. Empathy doesn't fill your belly or keep the rain off your back, but it does something just as important. It keeps you in the circle, and in this world, being inside the circle is everything. The first sign isn't a sound, it's a color. A streak of red, smeared on a forearm, bright against brown skin, catching the light like a spark. You're crouched near the fire, sharpening a point of bone when you notice it. At first you think it's blood, the leftover mark of a hunt or an injury, but then you see another woman across the camp with the same red, this time dotted in small deliberate spots down her cheek. This isn't an accident, it's something else, something chosen. The pigment comes from crushed ochre, dug from a place where the earth itself is the color of a dying sun. The men brought it back weeks ago, heavy lumps wrapped in hide, and since then you've watched people experiment with it. At first it was smeared on tools and stone, almost as if testing its staying power. But now it's being worn, on skin, on shells, even on strips of animal hide tied around the arm. It's not the only decoration appearing in camp. Shells with holes rubbed smooth by hours of twisting on a cord, feathers braided into hair, tiny cuts on the forearm, healed into raised lines that form patterns. None of these things fill the belly or protect against predators, but they do something else. They speak, not in words but in symbols that everyone in the group understands, and that outsiders will too. You see it most clearly during gatherings, when two smaller bands of humans meet by the river to trade meat for stone or hides. The decorations are on full display. A woman from the other group wears a necklace of bone carved into sharp triangles. One of your own men has arranged his hair with strips of plant fiber so it stands in ridges across his head. They notice each other instantly, eyes tracing the shapes and colors, weighing them as surely as they weigh the quality of a spear or the size of a haunch of meat. These are more than pretty additions. They are signals of belonging, of strength, of ties between people. A strip of hide dyed with ochre might mean you're part of a hunting team that brought down a large antelope. A particular shell might mean you've traveled to the coast and back. A scar in a certain pattern might tell a story about survival, about a wound that didn't kill you. And then there are the tokens exchanged between close partners. You've seen it? A carved bead pressed into a palm. A feather tied carefully into hair by someone else's hands. These gifts are small, but they are proof. I thought of you when I made this. I want you to carry it. Sometimes they last for years, worn until the cord frays or the bead cracks. Children join in, too, often in clumsy imitation. A little girl smears her face with mud instead of ochre, then preens when the older women laugh. A boy sticks a feather behind his ear and struts until someone steals it. It's play, but it's also training, learning how to use symbols to send messages, to make connections, to be seen. You've noticed how wearing these decorations changes how people act toward each other. A man marked with certain scars is treated with respect by those who've seen him survive danger. A woman with a necklace of rare shells is given space at the fire, not because she demands it, but because everyone knows what she's done to earn it. These symbols are a shorthand for reputation, a way to carry your history on your body, but they're also used to strengthen bonds. Two hunters who have worked together for seasons might begin wearing matching cords on their wrists. A group of women who forage together might braid each other's hair in the same style. These outward signs make invisible loyalties visible, and once they're visible, they're harder to break. The decorations aren't always peaceful in meaning. Sometimes they're meant to intimidate. Dark stripes across the face before a hunt. Sharp, jagged scars on the chest, cut deliberately to say, I can take pain and keep standing. These marks send messages to enemies as much as to friends. Still, much of the symbolism leans toward connection rather than division. You've seen two strangers from different groups meet, and after a cautious exchange, notice a matching shell or pigment pattern. Suddenly, the conversation shifts, less guarded, more curious. That tiny shared symbol is enough to bridge the gap, to suggest that maybe they have allies in common, that they might be allies themselves. It's in these moments you see how symbolic expression and emotion intertwine. A carved pendant isn't just a pendant, it's a piece of someone's effort, time, and identity. Giving it away is a risk. The receiver might lose it, break it, or wear it without care. But when the risk pays off, the bond it creates is stronger than a single shared meal or even a shared hunt. In quiet hours, you've tried your own hand at it. A smooth pebble, drilled with a hole, worn on a strip of sinew. The work is slow, chipping, grinding, turning it over again and again in your palm. When you finally tie it to your wrist, it feels different from any other object you carry. It doesn't just belong to you, it says something about you. You wonder what future generations will make of these things. Will they see them as mere ornaments? Or will they understand that each one was a thread in the web that held people together, that a painted line across the cheek could signal friendship, that a feather in the hair could mark the difference between being welcomed or driven away? The more you look, the more you see how these symbols carry feelings that are hard to put into words. Gratitude, admiration, desire, pride. They make those feelings visible, tangible, and once visible, they can be shared, copied, passed along, until they become part of the group's shared identity. There's a moment near the end of the day when the camp is quiet, the fire low, and the older male with the healed leg wound sits beside you. Without speaking, he holds out a small piece of ochre, its surface worn smooth. You take it, feel its weight, the warmth from his hand still on it. You know what it means, not in words, but in the way your chest tightens and your mouth curves in a smile. It's not just a gift, it's a reminder. You carried me when I couldn't walk, and I haven't forgotten. That's the power of these symbols. They let people say things they can't yet speak aloud. They store emotions in a form that can be held, worn, shown, and in a world where so much is fleeting, where meat rots, fires die, and trails vanish in the wind, a mark on the skin or a bead around the neck can last long enough to carry a message from one season to the next. The night deepens. Around the fire, you can see the faint gleam of beads and bone, the red flash of ochre in the firelight, the feathers that stir in the breeze. Each is a small declaration: I belong, I am remembered, I am part of this. Together they form a silent chorus, one that binds the group as surely as any spoken promise. The first sign is always subtle, a glance that lingers just a moment too long, the tightening of a jaw, the quick look away when someone else arrives. You've seen it before, and you see it now. Two males, both accomplished hunters, both well-liked, but both keeping a close watch on the same woman. This isn't about survival in the immediate sense. There's enough food today, enough water nearby. This is about position, about connection, about the quiet but powerful pull of competition over who will share time, shelter, and perhaps children with her. The feeling stirring in both of them is one you've learnt to recognize: jealousy. It's not a word in your world yet, but the shape of it is unmistakable. It's in the way one man steps into the other's path when they're both heading toward her, in the way their eyes scan each other up and down, measuring strength, recalling past victories and mistakes. It's in the way the woman notices them both, but says nothing, letting the tension hover. Jealousy here is not the all-consuming poetic thing it will become in later ages, but it's already dangerous. A rift between hunters can cost the group dearly in a cooperative hunt. Distrust can spread, making others take sides, weakening the unity that keeps you alive. But it's also a force that can't be avoided, because choice is part of your kind's life now. Choice in partners, in alliances, in who you trust with your children. And wherever there is choice, there will be rivalry. You've seen it spark in other ways too, over resources, a particularly rich patch of tubers that one forager guards from another, over status, who carries the biggest share of the kill back to camp, who sits closest to the fire during the telling of the day's events. These rivalries are rarely open at first. They begin with tiny acts, a withheld glance, a quiet word to someone else, a deliberate absence when help is needed. But sometimes they boil over. You remember one dry season when two women clashed over a man who'd been sharing his hunts between them. For weeks the tension simmered, extra long silences, meat given to others instead of directly to one another, glares over the fire. Then one morning it broke into shouting, harsh, sharp bursts of sound that brought the whole group to a standstill. The man tried to step between them, but the argument swept him aside. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about pride, about who would be seen as stronger, more respected. The fight ended only when the lead female stepped in, her voice cutting through the camp, forcing both to back down. Jealousy and rivalry, when left unchecked, can fracture the group. But your kind has been learning ways to contain it. Sometimes it's through intervention, an elder who speaks with both sides, a mediator who arranges for each to spend time apart until tempers cool. Sometimes it's through ritual, small, symbolic acts meant to restore balance, like sharing a meal or exchanging a token. More often, it's through the slow, deliberate work of trust building. A rival in one season can become an ally in the next, if you've hunted together, cared for the same child, or faced the same danger. Shared experience doesn't erase jealousy, but it can blunt its edge. You've also seen jealousy used, intentionally or not, to shape behavior. A man might give food to one woman in sight of another, knowing it will spark a reaction. A woman might praise one hunter's skill, just loudly enough for another to hear. These acts are calculated, not cruel for cruelty's sake, but part of the constant negotiation of relationships. The presence of rivalry changes how the group moves and works. On a hunt, two rivals might push themselves harder, running faster, striking sooner, each eager to prove their worth. In foraging, they might compete to find the largest or rarest food. This competitive drive can benefit the group, as long as it doesn't cross into sabotage. The balance is delicate. It's not only between individuals. Entire smaller factions can form within a larger band. Alliances that tilt the balance of influence, a rivalry between two leading hunters, might pull their closest allies into quiet competition as well. Who sits where, who gets the better share of the meat, whose voice carries more weight in deciding when to move camp. And yet, even in the midst of these undercurrents, the group knows when to set rivalry aside. When danger looms, a predator, a sudden fire, the need for a difficult migration, even the most watchful rivals will stand shoulder to shoulder. You've seen two men, barely speaking to each other for weeks, fight together without hesitation when a wild dog pack threatened the children. The grudge resumed later, yes, but in the heat of the moment, survival comes first. Jealousy isn't just a threat, it's a signal. It shows where value lies, where bonds are strongest, or most desired. A person no one competes for is a person with little influence. Those who inspire rivalry are often those whose skills, strength, or presence matter most to the group's future. In this way, jealousy maps the invisible structure of your society. There's a moment in camp one evening that stays with you. The two hunters from earlier are sitting apart, each with his own small circle. The woman they've both been watching walks between them, stopping to speak first with one, then the other. She smiles at both, takes food from neither, and then sits alone, where the firelight touches her face, but not her whole body. The rivals watch her, but they also watch each other, neither willing to yield, neither willing to escalate. The air between them is taut, but it holds. The ability to hold that tension without breaking into open conflict is a skill in itself, one your kind is slowly developing. It allows relationships to be renegotiated without destroying the group in the process. Over time, this restraint will be as important for survival as the cooperation in a hunt. The young watch all of this. They see who challenges whom, who wins and who yields, who shares and who withholds. They learn the signs, the tilt of a head, the narrowing of eyes, the way someone's tone changes when speaking of a rival. These lessons will guide them when it's their turn to navigate the tangle of bonds and competitions. Rivalry also sharpens awareness of fairness. If someone consistently takes more than they give, or uses jealousy to manipulate without contributing, the group notices. Reputation is everything here, and a bad one can be as deadly as a predator. Those who can't balance ambition with cooperation risk being left behind when the group moves on. In quieter moments, you see that jealousy can even deepen certain bonds. Two people who have fought for the same prize, whether a partner, a hunting role, or a piece of status, may come to respect each other's skill. That respect can form the basis for future trust, even if it's grudging at first. As night falls and the fire throws shadows on the trees, you watch the camp settle. The rivals have both found places to sleep, their faces turned away from each other. The woman is near the center, surrounded by the soft breathing of others. Tomorrow, the undercurrent will still be there, but so will the bonds that hold everyone together, bonds that have learned to bend under the strain without breaking. In the end, jealousy and rivalry are not just obstacles. They are part of the complex weave of your kind's emotional life, threads that can fray the fabric or strengthen it, depending on how they're handled. And in learning to handle them, your people are learning something crucial, that survival depends not only on what you fight for, but on how you choose to stop fighting when the time comes. The trail today winds through a low valley, where the grass grows tall enough to brush your ribs, and the air hums with the sound of insects. You're moving with a small group, not your whole band, but a mix of familiar faces and a few from a neighboring group you've only just met. The meeting happened by chance 2 days ago, at a bend in the river where both groups had come to drink. Normally, encounters with outsiders begin with caution. Everyone keeps their distance at first, watching for signs. Are these strangers hungry, desperate, aggressive? But this time, the approach was slow and deliberate, hands open, no weapons raised. You remember the moment the first greeting sound was made, a low two-note call your people used to announce peaceful intent. The other group replied in kind. That was the opening. The lead female from your group stepped forward, carrying a small bundle of dried meat. From the other group, a man stepped out, holding a pouch made of plaited grass, the faint scent of honey wafting from it. The exchange was simple, meat for honey, but the act itself was the bridge. In the time it took for each to pass their offering, the air shifted. Now, as you walk beside one of the strangers, you can feel the early warmth of something unusual, hospitality toward those not born into your circle. It's not instinctive in the way care for kin is. The drive to protect and feed those who share your blood runs deep, but opening that care to outsiders is something newer, a learned skill, and one with enormous risks and rewards. The wrong outsider could bring danger, disease, or betrayal, but the right one could bring knowledge, resources, even mates who will strengthen the group's future. That night by the river, the two groups camped near each other, fires close enough for the light to mingle. There was no mixing at first, just parallel activity, but as the night went on, curiosity began to break the invisible walls. A child wandered over to watch the strangers shape their hearth from flat stones. An older man from your group crossed the invisible boundary to point out a patch of edible greens nearby. Slowly, the space between the fires became a place where people stood and talked in the shared language of gestures, mimicry, and offering. Hospitality here is built from these small acts: sharing water when it's scarce, inviting someone to sit in your shade during the hottest part of the day, showing them the safe path across a tricky stretch of river. It begins with tangible help, but it carries an emotional weight, the message that you are willing to lower your guard, even briefly, to allow another person into your circle of safety. On the second morning after meeting, the two groups hunted together. It wasn't a large hunt, just a coordinated flush of guinea fowl from the grass. The meat was shared evenly, each group taking enough for their own needs. The way it happened, no argument over portions, no attempt to take the better cuts, reinforced the trust forming between you. Trust with outsiders isn't only about immediate benefit, it's also about future possibility. These people know places you don't, paths to water or salt licks you've never seen. They carry tools shaped in ways you've never tried. In their words and gestures, you catch hints of animals they hunt that you've only glimpsed at a distance. Every moment spent in peaceful exchange is a chance to learn, but hospitality is never given without testing. You've noticed how your group watches closely to see how the strangers treat the children who wander near them, or how they respond when offered less than they might want. These small tests matter more than any formal agreement. They reveal whether the bond can grow or if it's safer to part ways before anything turns sour. There's also the matter of mates. Intergroup unions can be risky. Bringing in someone whose loyalty isn't yet proven could destabilize the balance at home, but when they work, they knit groups together in ways no trade of goods can. You've seen this once before. A woman from your band went with a man from a neighboring group, and the following season, when food was scarce, her kin were welcomed into his camp without hesitation. The bond between the two families outlasted the original pair's partnership. This time, you can already see the flickers of that possibility. A young woman from your group lingers near one of the visiting hunters, both pretending to focus on scraping hides, but sneaking glances. Others notice, but no one intervenes. In fact, a few seem to make space for them to talk, as if testing the water for a connection that could serve everyone. Hospitality, at its core, is a calculated gamble, an act of emotional generosity that might one day be repaid many times over, or might end in harm. It requires a mix of openness and caution, the ability to extend trust without abandoning vigilance. It's a balance your kind is still learning, but each successful encounter strengthens the instinct to try again. That evening, the two groups gather for a shared meal, the fires pushed closer together than before. The guinea fowl is roasted and passed around. A pouch of honey is opened and shared more widely, its sweetness cutting the smoky taste of the meat. Laughter bubbles up as someone mimics the awkward hop of a startled bird from earlier in the day. The line between us and them blurs in moments like this. You see it in the way people sit, no longer grouped strictly by origin, but in a loose mix, knees touching, voices overlapping. You hear it in the way your own group's calls blend with the strangers in the night. A patchwork of sound that makes the darkness feel less vast. Still, the bond is temporary unless it's renewed. When the two groups part the next morning, there are gestures of farewell, a few small gifts exchanged, a bone tool here, a string of beads there. These are more than keepsakes. They are reminders that you've been welcomed elsewhere, and that you've welcomed others. The road ahead is unpredictable. You may never see this group again, but the memory of their faces, the way their firelight flickered against the riverbank, the taste of honey shared without hesitation, these linger. They shape how you will approach the next strangers you meet. And perhaps that is the greatest legacy of hospitality. It creates a mental map as real as any landscape, one where the places of welcome are marked, not by rivers or hills, but by the warmth of a fire and the space made for you beside it. Later, when the day's travel is done and you sit under the cooling sky, you realize that welcoming outsiders has changed you, even if only a little. It's stretched the edges of who counts as your people. It's made you think about how far those edges can go before they break, and how, with care, they can stretch even farther. Because each time your kind chooses welcome over suspicion, you're not just trading goods or information, you're laying the groundwork for a larger us, one that spans beyond blood and birthplace. And in the long sweep of time ahead, that might prove as important for survival as any weapon, any shelter, any skill. It begins with a stillness that's different from the quiet of rest. You're in the middle of a foraging trip, knee-deep in tall grass, when the wind shifts. Somewhere ahead, a bird gives a sharp, staccato call. One of the older women straightens from her crouch, head tilted, eyes scanning. You freeze, every sense narrowing. There's no talking. There doesn't need to be. A ripple of awareness moves through the group, like a current, each person's posture changing. Lower, tighter, ready to move. A moment later, you hear it, the faint cough of a leopard, far enough away that it's not yet a direct threat, but close enough to be taken seriously. Fear is immediate, but it's not chaos. It's collective. Everyone feels it at the same time, and everyone acts in response without discussion. The older children are pulled closer to the center. The baby is shifted to a different hip, the mother's free hand now gripping a stone. Two of the younger men move to the edge of the group in the leopard's direction, not to fight it, but to watch for movement. This is fear at its most useful, not a paralyzing force, but a shared alertness that spreads faster than words could. Your heart is pounding, but your steps are steady as you follow the others toward higher ground. Each person glances at the next, checking without checking, making sure the line holds together. Fear like this is not new to your kind. Every creature on the savannah knows it. The gazelle's sudden freeze, the bird's warning cry, the quick burst of flight. But what's different here is the coordination, the way one person's awareness becomes everyone's within seconds. It's not just each for themselves. It's a signal passed along, refined by practice. So the group moves as one. And it's not only predators. The same ripple happens with weather. The sudden drop in air pressure before a storm, the metallic smell that means lightning is near. It happens when a riverbank gives way under someone's weight, or when a distant shout signals trouble. The reaction isn't planned, it's ingrained through countless moments where those who listened and acted together survived, and those who didn't. The leopard doesn't appear this time. After a few minutes, the tension eases, though no one says so. The group slows, spreads out again, resumes the rhythm of searching the ground for food. But the shift in mood lingers. For the rest of the day, people stay closer together, eyes lifting more often to scan the horizon. Fear, when shared, doesn't just keep you alive in the moment. It also shapes the stories you tell later, around the fire that night. The cough of the leopard becomes part of the day's retelling. Someone mimics the sound, low in their throat, and others laugh. But the laughter is edged with recognition. Everyone knows it could have gone differently. The story will be remembered, passed along, adding one more thread to the group's collective memory of what to watch for and how to respond. Sometimes fear becomes ritual. You've seen it when a new season begins. Certain paths avoided because they pass near a place where someone was killed years ago. Objects left at the edge of a clearing to warn whatever danger might linger there. These acts are more than superstition. They're a way to make fear visible, to keep it in the minds of those who weren't there when the danger first happened. You've also noticed how fear is managed. If a danger is real and immediate, the group will show it openly, voices raised in warning calls, bodies tensed and moved. But if the danger is uncertain, Those with more experience will work to keep it contained, speaking in calm tones, moving slowly, so the younger ones don't panic. This control matters. Panic scatters people, and scattered people are easier prey. Even children learn this quickly. You've watched them play games that mimic danger, one pretending to be a predator, the others fleeing and regrouping, sometimes saving each other by pulling someone back into the safety of the circle. These games are practice for the real thing, embedding the rhythm of fear and response into their muscles, long before they face it for real. Fear also creates strange alliances. Two people who rarely interact may suddenly find themselves side by side when danger comes, each watching the other's back. Those moments can forge trust where there was none before. You remember a time when a man who often clashed with the lead hunter ended up defending him from a wild dog pack, swinging a burning branch until the animals backed off. After that, their arguments grew quieter, their cooperation in hunts more consistent. There's a cost to living with constant potential danger. Some nights you lie awake longer than you should, ears straining for sounds beyond the firelight. Some days you feel the knot of tension in your chest, even when nothing threatens. But over time, your kind has learned to weave fear into daily life in a way that doesn't break you. It sharpens your senses, keeps you from wandering too far alone, makes you value the group's presence more than any single piece of food or water. And there's a particular kind of fear that doesn't come from predators or storms. The fear of losing someone. When a child strays out of sight, when someone fails to return from foraging on time, the same ripple moves through the group. The alert calls are sharper, the search swift and purposeful. Relief when they're found comes with laughter and gentle scolding, but underneath is the memory of what could have been. That fear leaves its own mark, one that strengthens the impulse to keep each other close. In a way, fear is one of the oldest forms of communication your people have. It's immediate, unfiltered, understood, without explanation. A gasp, a sudden stillness, a widening of the eyes. These are messages that everyone reads the same way, and because the stakes are so high, no one ignores them. This shared understanding shapes more than just survival. It shapes the way you think about each other. You know who spots danger first, who stays calm under pressure, who runs without looking back. Those reputations matter. They influence who leads in a crisis, who others will follow into uncertain territory, who is trusted to guard the camp at night. When the group moves on from the Leopard's Valley the next day, there's no formal discussion of what happened, but everyone remembers where the sound came from, and the path chosen skirts far to the east. The memory of that moment, the cough, the ripple, the coordinated shift, is now part of the mental map each person carries. You realize that fear, for all its sharp edges, is one of the forces that binds your people together. It's not pleasant, but it's shared. It reminds everyone, in the most visceral way, that your lives are linked. One person's safety is everyone's safety. One person's danger is everyone's problem. That's the quiet truth. Fear isn't just a feeling that passes. It's a thread in the fabric of who you are, one that can tighten a group into a single, responsive whole in the space of a heartbeat. And in a world where threats are constant, that's as much a tool as any spear or fire. The air smells different here. You notice it before you see anything. A dry, resinous scent that means the wind has been pulling over the same patch of low shrubs for hours. This is familiar ground, not just to you, but to your people, for longer than anyone can remember. Somewhere ahead is the bend in the river, where the water pulls deep and slow even in the dry months, where certain stones always warm in the afternoon sun, where a stand of fig trees gives fruit at the turn of the season. You've walked here before, many times. The path rises and dips in ways your feet already know. The tall tree, with the lightning scar, still stands, pale wood exposed on its western side. The cluster of smooth rocks near the river still catches the early light. Even the call of the birds here feels like part of your own memory. This is not just a place to your group, it's home. Even if you don't live here all year, that feeling, the pull toward a certain stretch of land, is older than words. It's in the way the group relaxes when the bend in the river comes into view. in the way people spread out more easily here, trusting that the ground holds no surprises. It's in how the older members smile slightly when they point out a tree that's been here since they were children, and how the younger ones rush ahead to see if the same shallow pools still hold frogs. Attachment to land isn't about fences or ownership. It's about familiarity, about the way a place answers your needs without asking. You know where to find the deepest roots, where the shade will be at midday, where the rocks along the bank are flat enough to lie on. In a world where survival often depends on moving, this place offers the rare luxury of predictability. The bond runs deeper than utility. The river bend is where children have taken their first steps, where couples have sat together away from the noise of the camp, where the dead have been buried in shallow earth above the floodline. Memory clings to the land as much as to people. Every visit layers new moments onto the old. You've seen how this attachment influences decisions. When the group debates where to go next, someone will always suggest the river bend. Even if game is scarce here in some seasons, even if the figs won't ripen for weeks, the comfort of the place itself can tip the balance. In times of uncertainty, after a failed hunt, after an injury, after a loss, returning here is like taking a deep breath. Other groups have their own places like this. Sometimes you pass them on the way to the river, moving in the opposite direction. The exchanges are brief, cautious, a nod, a gesture of peace. But you recognize the look in their eyes. They are on their way to their place, the one that holds their stories. This love for land shapes how your people travel. Migrations aren't random. They trace loops between known places, each with its own season, its own role in the rhythm of the year. You might spend the wet months near higher ground, the dry months by a deeper river, but always the pattern returns to the river bend. It's a kind of map that lives in the mind, drawn not on hide or stone, but in remembered scents, sounds and sights. Sometimes when the group arrives here, small acts of renewal happen without anyone announcing them. Stones are restacked to reinforce a hearth. Fallen branches are cleared from sleeping spots. A path down to the water is worn smooth again under bare feet. These acts aren't about claiming the place, they're about keeping it ready, as if for a friend you expect to see again. And yet, attachment can bring risk. Staying too long in one place can strip it of resources, leave it vulnerable to predators, or make it a target for rivals. Your people have learned this through bitter experience. You still remember the season when the figs failed, and the water grew foul from too many days without rain. Leaving then was painful, but staying would have been worse. The departure felt like abandoning someone you loved, the bend in the river receding behind you as if watching you go. That's the paradox. Love for a place gives strength, but survival demands movement. So the attachment becomes seasonal, a reunion instead of a constant presence. The river bend is still yours. Even when you are far from it, you carry it in memory, in the way you look for echoes of it in new places. You've noticed how the young especially form bonds with land. They'll mark certain spots, a hollow under a tree root, a particular rock by the bank, as their own. When they return months later, they rush to check if those places are unchanged. If they are, it's like finding a hidden treasure. If they're not, it sparks a pang they can't yet name. Attachment to land also shapes how people feel about strangers. If you arrive at the river bend to find another group already there, the reaction is sharper than it would be in a neutral place. Even if no one says so, you feel the tension, the silent weighing of whether they will move on or whether you will. Sometimes it ends in peaceful sharing, other times in a quiet withdrawal, and rarely in conflict. But when the place is empty, when the first to arrive is your own group, the relief is palpable. People spread out quickly, reclaiming familiar spaces. The first drink from the river tastes sweeter. The first night's sleep here is deep. The fire burns longer, as if no one wants to waste a moment of being here. It's not only the practical and the sentimental that tie you to this bend in the river. There's a deeper pull, a sense that being here makes you part of something larger. The same tree has shaded generations. The same stones have been warmed by countless fires. Even if you can't put it into words, you feel it. This place remembers you, just as you remember it. At night, lying under the same stars that have always shone here, you think about how future members of your group, children not yet born, will one day walk this same bank, hear the same frogs at dusk, feel the same cool mud between their toes. They won't know every story that happened here, but they'll add their own, and so the bond will continue, growing layer by layer. In the morning, you rise early to fetch water. Mist curls off the surface, the air damp and cool. Your reflection shimmers in the ripples as you lean over to fill the gourd. For a moment, it's as if the river itself is looking back at you, as if it knows you've been here before and will be again. That's what love for a place does. It turns the land into part of your identity. You are not just a person in the world, you are a person of this place, and when you leave, you carry it with you, not in your hands, but in the way your feet know the slope of the bank, in the way your nose catches the resin-scented wind from miles away, in the way your heart eases the moment you see the bend appear on the horizon. The air is tense in the way it gets before someone steps forward into danger. You can feel it in the hush around the fire, in the way people glance at each other, but avoid holding anyone's gaze too long. The decision was made quietly, but the meaning is clear. Tomorrow, a small group will take the narrow gorge to reach the migrating herd. It's the fastest way to get meat before the dry season deepens, and also the most dangerous. You've walked that gorge before. The walls close in so tightly in places that two people can't pass side by side. Loose rock shifts underfoot, and the sound echoes, making it hard to tell if you're hearing your own steps or something else moving behind you. It's a place where predators can wait unseen, where a rockfall could block the way out. Yet no one argued when the hunters volunteered. The lead male offered first, then the woman who is best with the throwing spear. Then two others, younger but fast, the kind who can climb the rock walls if needed. No one forced them. They stepped forward because they know what's at stake. Without meat, the group's weakest, the old, the injured, the very young, will be in trouble long before the rains return. This is the shape of sacrifice in your world. It's not announced with speeches. It's understood in the way someone picks up their weapon and begins checking the bindings. In the early years of your people, the line between self-preservation and group preservation was narrower. Now you see more and more moments when the line is blurred, when someone risks themselves for others without immediate benefit. Sometimes it's for kin, a parent shielding a child, a sibling fighting off a predator, but other times it's for someone only loosely connected, for the sake of the group's survival as a whole. You've seen it in the way people react to predators. Last season, when a lioness lunged from the grass toward the edge of camp, it was the older male with the limp who threw himself forward, swinging a burning branch. He couldn't run, couldn't fight the way he once could, but he stood between the lioness and the sleeping children until the others drove her away. His hands were burned and he carried the smell of singed hair for days afterward, but he never spoke of it as anything remarkable. Sacrifice can be loud and immediate, like that moment, but it can also be slow and quiet. There was the time a woman gave her share of food to an injured man for weeks, eating almost nothing herself. When he was strong enough to hunt again, he brought her the choicest cuts of meat for the rest of the season. She never asked for repayment, but it came anyway. Sometimes the sacrifice isn't successful. You still remember the young hunter who slipped into the river to push a child back toward the bank. When the current caught her, the child lived. He did not. His body was found miles downstream the next day, wedged between two rocks. For days after, the group moved slowly, speaking less, keeping the children closer than ever. His name, or at least the sound used for it, became part of the stories told around the fire, not in sorrow alone, but in pride. Altruism, like this, reshapes how the group sees itself. It creates a shared sense that we is worth more than I. Those who act for others gain a kind of standing that doesn't fade quickly. People listen when they speak. They're trusted in decisions that affect everyone. In this way, sacrifice becomes not just a personal choice, but a kind of social currency. But it's not always without tension. Choosing to risk yourself can sometimes mean others worry you're being reckless. You've heard arguments in the low tones of night, Why did you go so close? Why didn't you wait for the rest of us? The balance is delicate. Courage can save the group, but it can also endanger it if poorly timed. This is why those who sacrifice successfully are remembered so vividly. They have judged the moment well, acted at the right time, and returned alive. Their example becomes a kind of unwritten rule for the next person faced with the same choice. Tomorrow, when the hunters take the gorge, you'll see all of these threads woven together. The courage to step forward, the skill to manage risk, the trust that others will hold the camp together while they're gone. And if something happens, if the gorge claims one of them, the group will carry that weight in the same way it carries the memory of the river rescue, the lioness fight, the long hunger endured so someone else could heal. You think about how sacrifice often comes in chains. One act leads to another. The older male who saved the children from the lioness might have been emboldened because years ago someone once shielded him in a hunt. The woman who volunteers for the gorge might remember the time she was carried back to camp with a broken ankle. These memories feed into each other, making the choice to step forward feel less like a lone act and more like fulfilling an unspoken promise passed down through seasons. Children absorb this too. They watch who steps forward when danger comes, who shares when there's not enough, who stays behind to guard the sick. Later, when they face their own moments, they draw on those examples. The instinct to sacrifice for others becomes part of what defines them as members of the group. By the fire tonight, the volunteers for the gorge sit slightly apart, their tools spread out before them. One rebinds the head of a spear with sinew. Another sharpens a stone blade. The air is calm, but every so often someone from the rest of the group walks over to check on them, bringing water, offering a strip of dried meat, touching a shoulder in quiet support. It's not farewell, but it's close. The unspoken truth is that everyone knows not all of them may return. That knowledge doesn't make anyone stop them. It makes the act more respected. In the morning, they'll leave before the rest of the group wakes fully. You'll hear the faint clink of stone against stone as they gather their gear, the soft thud of their feet on the packed earth. You'll see them disappear into the gorge, their backs straight, their pace steady, and then you'll turn back to camp, carrying the silent hope that they will come back before nightfall. If they do, the return will be marked, not with a ceremony, but with relief visible in every face, with food shared widely, with the quiet glow of knowing the risk paid off. If they don't, the camp will shift into the patterns of mourning, work slowed, stories told in low voices, the fire burning later into the night. Either way, the choice they've made becomes part of the story of the group, part of the invisible ledger of who has given what for the sake of everyone else. In this way, love for the group takes on its fiercest form, the willingness to stand where danger is thickest, not because you must, but because you can. The fire tonight is small, more for light than warmth. The air is heavy with the scent of roasted meat and the faint sweetness of crushed berries, but the food is secondary to what's happening now. The group has finished eating, and no one is in a hurry to sleep. People shift closer together, forming a loose circle. The older male with the healed limp clears his throat, a small habitual sound that makes the younger ones glance his way. He doesn't speak in words, not the way people will in the far future, but he begins all the same. It starts with a gesture, a slow sweep of his arm toward the east, then a mimic of a heavy stride, shoulders hunched. You know this story. You've heard it before. It's about a hunt in the high grass, where the wind made the prey's scent vanish. About the near miss with a charging buffalo. About the spear that struck true only at the very last moment. His movements are deliberate, slow enough for everyone to follow, punctuated by grunts and sharp exhalations that mark surprise, danger, triumph. The children lean forward. One of them mimics the grunt, earning a ripple of quiet laughter. This is how the story passes, not as a fixed set of words, but as a rhythm of movement and sound, shaped anew each time it's told. You can almost see the buffalo in the older man's eyes, can feel the tension in the group as the moment of the hunt's climax approaches. When he mimics the final throw, his whole body leans into it, and for a heartbeat, The firelight flickers over faces caught between the now and the then. Storytelling like this is more than entertainment. It's an inheritance, not of objects, but of experience. The children learn where the high grass lies, how the wind can shift without warning, what a charging buffalo's first movement looks like. The adults are reminded of who has faced danger and lived, and how they did it. You've seen stories serve another purpose too, carrying emotions across time. A story about a hunt isn't just about tactics. It's about the fear that clenched the hunter's chest, the relief that flooded in when the prey fell, the pride in bringing the meat back to the group. These feelings aren't named outright, but they're there in the voice, the pauses, the quickened breath. The listeners feel them, and in feeling them, they carry them forward. Around the fire, not all stories are about hunts. Some are about long journeys, the crossing of a river in flood, the finding of a hidden spring. Others are about people now gone, their gestures and quirks mimicked so well that for a moment it's as if they're back among you. You remember the time the lead female told the story of her mother's foraging skill, tracing in the dirt the exact pattern of where the best roots grew. She laughed as she told it, but there was a catch in her voice that made the whole group quiet for a moment. Storytelling binds the group in ways nothing else can. The act of listening together, eyes on the speaker, bodies leaning toward the light, creates a shared focus, a rare stillness in a life that is mostly movement. In those moments, you are not just a collection of individuals, you are a single audience, breathing in time with the teller. You've also seen stories act as warnings. There is one about a boy who wandered too far from the fire at night and never returned. It's told with sudden bursts of sound that make the children flinch, with long silences that stretch until they shift uncomfortably. The point is clear without being said: stay close after dark. Another tale, about a woman who ignored the warning calls of birds and was mauled by a leopard, is retold every few seasons when the grass grows high. These cautionary stories stick because they are wrapped in emotion, fear, shock, sorrow, making them easier to remember than any dry instruction. Sometimes stories are used to settle disputes. A teller will recount a past incident in which cooperation saved the day, glancing now and then at the people currently in conflict. The message doesn't have to be spoken directly. It lands all the same. A shared history becomes a guide for present choices. Children begin practicing storytelling early, imitating the gestures and sounds of the adults. At first their tales are nonsense, a scramble of events and copied movements. But as they grow, they learn how to pace a moment for suspense, how to use a pause to hold the group's attention, how to weave a lesson into the shape of a memory. By the time they are fully grown, they can carry the group's history in their bodies and voices. You've noticed that the best storytellers are often those who have lived through the most. The limp of an old injury, the scars from a hunt gone wrong, the deep lines at the corners of the eyes, all these become part of the performance. When they gesture toward the scar on their arm, the story gains weight. When they mimic the stagger of a wounded animal, you know they've seen it with their own eyes. There's an unspoken understanding that these stories are not just for now. They are for later, for when the people here are gone, for when the children listening tonight are the ones telling them. The stories stretch across seasons, linking those who came before to those who will come after. One night, you tell your own story. It's about a time you nearly stepped on a snake hidden in the grass, about the way its movement froze you in place, the way your pulse roared in your ears. You mimic the sway of its body, the flash of its tongue, the way you backed away step by slow step until you were far enough to run. When you finish, the children's eyes are wide, and one of the older men grunts in approval. You feel a strange warmth in your chest, the knowledge that your memory is now part of the group's shared store. As the night deepens, the fire burns lower, and the stories turn softer. These are not about hunts or dangers, but about the first green shoots of spring after a hard dry season, about the time two children were born on the same day, about the joy of finding honey where no one expected it. These tales are quieter, but no less important. They carry the reminder that life is not only about fear and survival, it's also about sweetness, about the moments that make enduring the hard times worth it. Eventually, the circle thins as people drift towards sleep. The last storyteller speaks in a low voice, describing a journey made long ago to a place no one has visited in years. The details are hazy now, but the tone is filled with longing. It leaves the group in a reflective silence, the fire's embers glowing like small, distant suns. You lie down under the cool night sky, the murmur of the river in your ears, and think about how much of what you know comes from these moments. Without the stories, the knowledge of where to find water, how to track an injured animal, which clouds mean coming rain, all of it could be lost in a single generation. Without the stories, the memories of those who have shaped you would fade like smoke. Storytelling is more than passing time. It is the lifeline that stretches between past and future, carrying not just facts, but feelings. It teaches you who you are, what you value, and how you fit into the long thread of your people's journey. And in the glow of the fire, surrounded by familiar faces leaning toward the same voice, you feel that thread wrap a little tighter around you all. The air is damp this morning, the kind that clings to your skin and makes the edges of leaves shine. You're standing at the edge of a clearing, watching the group return from a small hunt. It wasn't a great success, just a pair of hares and a few birds caught in snares, but it's enough to keep the fires warm with the smell of roasting meat for a day or two. What stands out isn't the food itself, but the way the hunters arrive together. They walk in an easy rhythm, shoulders brushing now and then, their voices weaving in and out of laughter and quiet talk. There's no urgency now, no danger pressing from behind. What they carry back is more than meat. It's the comfort of having faced something side by side and returned with something to show for it. This is what your kind has grown into over countless seasons, a richness of feeling that would be hard to name if you had the words, because it is many things at once: pride in a job done well, relief at safety, the satisfaction of providing for others, the bond that comes from shared work. In the distant past, these emotions were simpler, sharper: fear, hunger, joy, anger. But now they have begun to layer, to combine, to carry shades of meaning that go far beyond a single cause. You see it in the way a mother watches her child bite into the first piece of cooked meat. The look on her face isn't just happiness, it's a blend of love, relief, and the deep satisfaction of seeing her effort bear fruit. You see it in the way a man nods toward the hunter who took the final throw, tonagent, respect, and an unspoken promise that the favor will be returned one day. By now, the emotional range of your people has widened so much that entire conversations happen without words. A tilt of the head can signal doubt, a brief touch on the arm can offer comfort, a certain half-smile can carry both amusement and reproach at the same time. These subtleties knit the group together in ways that brute force never could. Around the fire that evening, the mood is relaxed. One of the younger women starts to mimic the moment when a bird escaped from a snare, fluttering into the face of one of the hunters. The group bursts into laughter, not the quick bark of relief after danger, but a warmer, rolling laughter that leaves everyone smiling afterward. Humor now carries more than simple joy. It can ease tension, patch over awkwardness, even soften the memory of failure. Not all feelings are warm, of course. The expanded range also means sharper conflicts. Resentment can simmer longer, disappointment can sting more deeply, shame can weigh on someone for days. But even these emotions have their place. They shape behavior, teaching through discomfort as much as through pleasure. You remember a young man who returned from a hunt empty-handed after leaving his team to chase a smaller animal on his own. The group didn't confront him directly, but for days afterward, no one invited him to join the lead position in a hunt. The quiet exclusion, the looks passed between others, carried their own message. Your choices affect all of us. It wasn't punishment in the physical sense, but the social weight of it was enough to change his behavior. These complex emotions also allow for deeper kinds of reconciliation. A wrong done in the heat of anger can later be mended with gestures of regret, offering food, tending a fire, sitting beside someone in silence until the air between you clears. Forgiveness, like rivalry, has become a skill. You've noticed that in moments of uncertainty, people now seek not just safety but understanding. When a new decision is to be made, whether to follow the herds north, whether to stay near a dwindling waterhole, The group gathers, and the discussions are as much about feelings as they are about practical facts. Who feels uneasy about the move? Who feels confident? The leaders don't ignore these feelings. They weigh them alongside the visible signs of the land and the animals. Even love between partners has deepened into something more layered than the simple pair bonding of earlier times. There is still the cooperation in raising children, the sharing of food and shelter, but now there's also a comfort in shared silence, an enjoyment in seeing the other laugh, a sense of loss when they are absent for even a short time. These bonds are not just about survival anymore. They are about wanting someone's presence for its own sake. The same is true for friendships. Two people might not share blood or children, yet still move through the world as a matched pair, working side by side, sharing small jokes, defending each other in disputes. If one is injured, the other is never far away. Such bonds give the group a web of loyalty that extends beyond the obvious family lines. Art, too, is feeding into this widening emotional range. The beads and ochre marks are no longer just signs of belonging. They are ways of expressing mood, of celebrating events. You've seen people mark their bodies differently after a successful hunt than after a loss, wear brighter colors during the season when food is plentiful, or choose certain patterns when a child is born. These choices affect how others approach them, creating a feedback loop between appearance and emotional state. Music, or what will one day become music, is starting to appear in this world as well. It begins with the simple rhythm of hands striking a hollow log or two sticks together. At first it's a way to pass time, but soon you notice how the sound draws people in, how it syncs their movements. Some rhythms seem to stir excitement before a hunt, others calm restless children at night. The shared beat becomes another way to align emotions within the group. This growing complexity of feeling means that moments of connection are deeper than they once were. When someone returns from a dangerous task, the relief is sharper because it's tied not only to survival, but to affection, admiration, even a kind of pride. When someone dies, the grief is heavier because it's tied to so many shared memories and layers of relationship. It also means the group's collective mood can shift more quickly. A single event, a fight, a success, a loss, can ripple through everyone, changing the atmosphere for days. This interconnectedness can be a vulnerability, but it's also a strength. It allows the group to rally together in the face of danger or to celebrate fully when fortune smiles. You think about this as you watch the fires glow on the faces around you. The hunters from the morning sit together, leaning into each other's shoulders. The children are curled up against their mothers, some already asleep. The older members trade quiet words, their voices low and even. In this scene, every thread of connection is visible. Kinship, partnership, friendship, shared labor, shared risk. The emotional range here is no longer a handful of basic instincts. It's a palette with many colors, each blending into the next. Respect into pride, pride into affection, affection into loyalty. And just like in the hunt, the skill lies in knowing when to bring each one forward, when to hold it back, when to let it mix into something new. Before sleep takes you, you catch a moment between two people on the far side of the fire. One reaches out, brushing an imaginary speck from the other's arm. It's nothing really, just a touch, but the way the second person looks up and smiles tells you that it's everything. That tiny exchange holds care, trust, gratitude, and something more that doesn't need naming. This is where your kind stands now. No longer creatures moved only by hunger, fear, and the urge to reproduce, but beings who can feel and act on a wide spectrum of emotions, each shaping the choices that will carry you forward. And in that spectrum lies a power that will prove just as essential as any tool you've ever shaped from stone. The morning is clear, the sky an unbroken sweep of pale blue. You wake to the sound of quiet movement, not the hurried bustle of a hunt or the tense murmurs before danger, but the slow, steady rhythm of people preparing to walk together. There's no single goal today, no urgent need pressing the group forward. The season has been kind, the rivers still run deep, the trees are heavy with fruit, and the animals graze in wide, unhurried herds. It's in moments like this, that you can see most clearly what all the seasons before have built. Every bond, every instinct, every hard-learned lesson is here in the way your people move and speak to one another. The group feels like one long thread, each person a knot in it, strong in their own place, but woven tightly into something larger. A young boy runs ahead, laughing as he dodges between the tall grasses. His mother calls after him, not sharply, but with a note that carries the promise of safety. He circles back almost at once, grinning, because even in his play he understands the joy is in the freedom, but the freedom works because the group is always there to catch him if he stumbles. As you walk, small exchanges ripple along the line. Someone offers water from their gourd to a person who's been coughing. A hunter carries the pack of an older woman without being asked. Two children swap a piece of fruit back and forth, taking bites and giggling. These moments are unremarkable in themselves, yet they are the clearest proof of what your kind has become. A species held together not just by survival needs, but by something far softer and stronger, love. It's not the narrow love of a parent for a child, though that's here too. It's not only the love of partners or the loyalty of friends, it's a love that spills beyond those lines, into the way you care for someone simply because they are yours, part of the us you carry in your mind and body. You've seen this love at work in every form, in the courage that steps forward to face a predator, in the patience of someone teaching a child how to weave a basket, in the shared laughter that cuts through a tense moment, in the silence held around a fresh grave. These are not isolated acts. They are part of a single pattern, repeated across seasons and generations. The path winds upward, and from the rise you can see far in every direction. Patches of forest break the plain, dark against the gold of dry grass. A thin ribbon of river glints in the sun. Somewhere out there, other groups are walking too, carrying their own stories, their own memories, their own web of bonds. You wonder how far this web can stretch. The meetings with outsiders, the trading of goods, the exchange of mates, these have already shown that us can grow larger than one camp, larger than one stretch of land, and with every meeting that ends in trust rather than conflict, the shape of that us expands again. The group stops for the midday rest in a grove of trees. The shade is cool, the ground soft with fallen leaves. People settle in small clusters, some eating, some napping, some talking in low tones. A few older members sit together, idly shaping bits of wood and bone. They've told their stories enough times that now they're content to listen, smiling faintly at the younger ones practicing their own versions. You sit with a few others, watching as a girl, no older than 10, holds up a piece of ochre. She's been grinding into powder. She dabs it onto the arm of the boy next to her, making a crooked line, and he laughs before marking her in return. It's a small thing, but it's part of the long chain of symbolic acts that say, I see you, you are part of me, and I am part of you. When the group moves again, the pace is easy. The path takes you past a cluster of boulders where lizards bask, unbothered by your presence. You notice how the hunters walk now, not scanning with the constant tension of hunger, but still alert enough to spot danger. It's a balance that has taken millennia to learn, to live with awareness, but not in fear. By late afternoon, the land begins to open into a broad plain. The wind carries the scent of rain from far away, though the clouds are still low on the horizon. The group pauses to drink from a shallow pool, and you catch sight of your own reflection, the lines of your face, the streaks of red ochre on your cheek from earlier in the season. Behind you, in the rippling surface, are the faint shapes of others bending to drink. It's a fleeting image, but it strikes you. You are never alone here, not even in your own shadow. Evening comes with the steady glow of the fire. Meat sizzles on the stones, its scent curling upward into the cooling air. The children chase each other in the last light, their laughter rising and falling like birds calling to one another. The adults talk, weaving together the day's small events, a track spotted, a tree heavy with fruit, a near miss with a startled antelope. Later, when the children are asleep and the fire has burned low, someone begins a soft rhythm on a hollow log. Another voice hums in time with it. The sound low and warm. The melody has no words, but it carries meaning all the same, a reminder of the day's safety, of the circle's unbroken strength. One by one, others join in. A second beat, a third, a thread of higher humming that dances above the rest. It's in that moment that you feel the shape of everything that has come before. The first sparks of empathy, when someone shared food with an injured companion, the bonds of parent and child that grew into the bonds between partners, friends, allies, the learning to laugh together, to grieve together, to face danger as one body, the marks on skin, the beads and shells, the patterns that speak without words, the way jealousy has been tempered into cooperation, the way fear has been turned into a shared signal rather than a solitary burden. All of it has been building toward this, a kind of love so broad that it holds not just those you know best, but the whole living thread of your people. You think about the earliest ones, the ones who huddled together for warmth without knowing why it felt better than being alone, the ones who risked a little to help another and found that both lived longer because of it. Without knowing the word, they began this long weaving. Without meaning to, they set the pattern you live inside now. The night deepens and the rhythm of the log slows. People drift toward their sleeping places, but a few stay by the fire. You stay too, watching the embers glow, feeling the steady warmth on your face. There's no urgency in you now, only a quiet gratitude that you are here, that they are here, that the circle is whole. In the morning, the path will bend toward new ground. There will be dangers again, hunger, storms, the eyes of predators watching from the grass. There will be choices to make, risks to weigh, losses to bear, but there will also be hands reaching to steady you, voices calling you back if you wander too far, laughter breaking the heaviness when it threatens to settle in. That is the real survival tool your kind has built. Not just sharper stone or stronger arms, but the decision repeated 1,000 times in 1,000 ways to face the world together, to keep each other inside the circle. And as you close your eyes, listening to the slow breathing of those around you, you feel the truth settle deep. Love is not a luxury here. It's not an ornament to be worn in better seasons. It is the thread that has kept your kind from unraveling, the net that catches you when you fall, the bond that turns me into us. It's the reason you awake tomorrow, step into the uncertain day, and keep walking forward, not alone, but as part of something that has been growing for millions of years and will keep growing long after your own steps fade from the earth. Sweet dreams.